Well, my next guest joining me right now is Annalie Blundell, who is known as the People's Whisperer. How very interesting. And she's going to talk about the status. Isn't actually about titles, salaries or job description. It's communicated is in subtle, often invisible ways. Eye contact, posture, tone of voice standing higher. Very, very big welcome to you. Thank you very much for joining us, Annetta.
Thank you, Jenny. Yes, who would have thought the height of your seat could have such a huge impact?
Well, you've pointed out so many examples, actually, and let's throw the blame a little bit first off at television talk show hosts.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, you don't have to go very far to see the impact of status on chair height and the impact it has on, you know, the conversational safety and how relaxed guests feel and the kind of conversation that ensues as a result of how you're sitting together. So, you know, classic example might be the way Oprah Winfrey sits with her guests, or Drew Barrymore. They sit at the same level. They sit on a round couch. You know, everyone's conversational. But if you take someone like Jimmy Kimmel or Stephen Colbert or one of those late night hosts, you'll notice that they sit quite a lot higher than their guests.
Yes, it's a very deliberate and obvious, I guess, stance by them. And I guess they realise what they are doing, saying, I am in control and I will lead this conversation.
But it's so weird, don't you think?
Yeah.
I mean, Jenny, these days are over, aren't they?
I should hope so.
It's the classic, you know, power play of having someone come to your office and making them sit in a little chair. I mean, I remember a million years ago when I worked at a branch, I was a new branch manager. I was about 23 years old, and I had to go visit one of my customers who was a chief justice. And I was led down this big, long corridor, lots of stately books. It was all very, you know, impressive. And I sat down on this chair, and it was low and it was consuming. And I swear to God, it enveloped me.
Yes.
My feet were hanging off the ground. They were swinging in the wind. And I had zero authority in that conversation.
Does the person that is about to speak to you realise what they are doing to the person sitting opposite in that position?
I think there's a couple of ways to look at it. You must feel the differential, because you know when you're sitting with someone or you're standing with someone and you're having just a general conversation, if all of a sudden they sit down and now you're leaning over them and you're maintaining that conversation, it feels different. You can tell that the dynamics have shifted. But perhaps if you're so used to holding that position of authority and having everybody come in and, you know, sit in the small chair in front of you, maybe that's part of your positioning and you don't even notice anymore. I don't know.
What makes good management then? I mean, surely they're aware of what they are doing and intimidating people that are human beings, and, you know, you want to do the best for the job that you're about to take on, and yet you feel this overpowering forcefulness, I suppose, with authority, and it's a very horrible thing to do to anybody.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And the idea is, particularly if you take something like the workplace and maybe it's an interview or you've got a new member of the team and, you know, you're giving them some work and you're explaining stuff and you're standing over them and you're towering over them and they're already intimidated because they're new and maybe they're junior, and what you really want to do is create a sense of conversational safety. So you want to reduce that element of status. And a key way to do that is literally reduce your height.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you might just sit down next to them and just get onto a more of an even keel.
What do they achieve by following what you're suggesting? I'm talking about management here. I mean, do they get more respect? Do they get to be more likeable? They don't want to show too much of a softer side, I don't think, sometimes, because they want to know that they are the ones that are employing you. So what do they get out of it if they start to get down to the right height, I suppose, and not show authority in their body?
They get response. And I think, you know, it's a fine line between managing authority and likability. And so, we're moving into this era where command and control is dead. We don't need more authoritarians in leadership. Jenny, I don't know.
No, you're right.
We're done with that. And so what we want are leaders who can create space for other voices, who can make other people feel comfortable and feel like they're interested in their opinions and perspectives. So whatever you can do to reduce that differential and create a sense of safety where people feel less intimidated to share their opinions and perspectives, I mean, that's the way to go.
I think respect for management, respect for the owner of a business is definitely the way to go. You're going to get your employees to give so much more because they respect and like you, without a doubt. What about the politicians? I mean, I know a lot of them years ago used to go around kissing babies and shaking hands, and I don't know whether they felt comfortable doing that. Probably not. But, politicians these days tend to yell a lot. That's their voice of authority, isn't it? Does that have as much damage, do you think, as towering over people?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a status marker, right? So as soon as you're raising your voice, you're raising your status, you're raising your height, you are trying to dominate the other person. So this is a power over approach, and all it does is set up a defensiveness. You think about it.
Yeah.
If you're actually after real dialogue and real conversation, you don't shout at people.
No, true.
You ask questions, you invite contribution if you're actually interested in what people have to say. But if you are just set out, if you're just, hell-bent on being heard and shouting to be heard, well, that says more about, from my perspective, it says more about how you think you're effective than it is about actually being effective. And I tell you right now, it's not effective.
No, it is definitely not effective. People are very offended by it, and they go home feeling sort of not worthy sometimes to see people hurt and damaged by not feeling they're doing the right job and not being told occasionally that they're doing a good job, which doesn't hurt, for goodness sake. A little bit of rhetoric to say to somebody, gee, what you did the other day was great. Thank you very much for that. What does it cost? What does it cost?
Absolutely. It really doesn't cost anything. And I think it's the simplest thing to be sensitive to who you're in dialogue with. And I think the best metaphor I can give for something like this and to help people remember is if you are speaking to a small child, you've got a toddler, like a 3 or 4 year old, let's say, you don't tower above them and say, where are your shoes? Johnny, get your shoes. You probably get on your knees. You probably, will kind of be face height with them, and you lower your tone because you understand that if you overpower them with your height, with your voice, with your energy, all it does is set off a fear response. And, regular people in the workforce are not too different to that.
Well, absolutely not. I think that's why a lot of employees, like working from home, because they don't, I suppose they only get yelled at via email.
That's right. And you can just hit the delete button.
Yes. But you know what? People can get very offended with emails as well, can't they? Non-verbal.
Absolutely. And I mean, the classic case here is if you type with the caps lock on, well, that sounds like shouting.
Ooh,
so don't do that.
Yes.
But also the way that you approach conversations and the way you ask people to do things, if you use a very blunt and direct approach, that's also a status symbol, and it can also create that same sense of insecurity when you're demanding things rather than asking for support or, making suggestions around, how someone might approach something. Let me know if you have any questions. So conversationally, we're also creating, containers of safety or threat.
Yes.
In the brain.
It can happen in the workplace. It does. It does with management, but it can also happen with work partners in the workplace. If you haven't kept up with technology and you ask somebody for help, you do get a bit of an eye roll occasionally, and that is quite offensive as well. So you stop asking, and you're not learning, and you're not getting ahead.
And particularly with the introduction of AI.
Oh gosh, yes.
So we've got people who are racing ahead when it comes to how they use the new technology and the AI. And so if you're really at the beginning of your journey and you're asking simple things, I mean, that can certainly cause an eye roll. And it can also be a way to induce shame, which is another way to induce status, right?
Yep.
Because
Yep.
I'm smarter than you, I'm more up with the technology than you, and you're a dinosaur and you're behind, and therefore less important.
Oh, look, there's no doubt about it. You have seen it over the years, I think, in the workplace happen. I've already shown you once. Well, do you mind showing me again?
Yeah.
You know, it's. I think it's a very cruel thing for people to go home after a day of work and not feel worthy. I think it's a very cruel thing to have happen.
And I think when people are going home and they're not feeling seen or heard, and they're not feeling important, then that's the sort of stuff that leads to the discontent of our society, my friend. And, you know, then we have people who turn into keyboard warriors, and now we're getting into fights that aren't our own, and we're having opinions that really are just spurred by the fact that we're not feeling seen. We're not feeling important in our lives. And so we stick our nose into other people's businesses, and we have these opinions that just, you know, rile up whatever's going on, you know, outside there, rather than just...
Yep. I couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you more. Annalie, what line of work are you taking to encourage people to think differently?
So I work either in the one-on-one space with executive coach, you know, working with teams, and really the messages that I have for people is to think about your conversational footprint. So, you know, people say to me, oh, I'm taking this new coaching approach, Annalie, you know, I'm starting my meetings and I'm asking a question and I get crickets. Like, this coaching stuff doesn't work. And I say, how have you trained them to stay silent? Yeah. When they offer an opinion or an idea, do you say, oh, no, we tried that, it doesn't work. What else? What else have you got? Yep. And, of course, you're going to train people to stay silent. So, you know, we have to first and foremost take heed of our conversational footprint. How are people responding to us, and what is that telling us about the small changes we can make to be a safer vehicle for conversation? Absolutely true. And the people that perpetrate, unfortunately, bad feelings onto others, they have to think, how would they feel if it was done to them? Yeah. Yep, that's a good point. Annalie, do you have a website? Indeed I do, www.annalieblundell.com. ANNELIBLUNDELL, as I write it down, .com, as simple as that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you speaking to us, and you were at the right height. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you indeed.